Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us for what I hope is the last Headmasters Roundtable of the summer. Thanks to all of you for joining earlier Headmasters Roundtables and for making the time to be with us tonight. I'm going to allow the room to populate here for just a moment. We've just come off of an hour and 29-minute Headmasters Roundtable with the day student families. So some of our panelists are taking a short break and they'll be right back with us, but I want to introduce them so you know who's on the panel tonight. In addition to me, I think most of you know who I am, but we're joined by our Dean of Students, Ari Baum. We're joined by our International Family Liaison, Helen Cho, our Academic Dean, Katie Hudak, our Medical Director, Dr. Kristen Spencer, our Assistant Headmaster for Enrollment Management, Tom Eccleston, and I believe it's not on the list right now, but Sylvia Rodriguez Vargas, there she is, our new Associate Headmaster, and I think that's everyone on the panel. I may have missed someone, but my great thanks to them for joining us tonight, especially for a 3-hour marathon of somewhat repetitive presentations. We have over 200 people participating tonight. We had over 100 on our day student call. So between these two calls, we're covering most of our student body and families. Thanks for being here again. And let me just give you an overview of the evening. Obviously, we're really excited to welcome students and faculty back to campus in the coming weeks. We're excited that we were able to accomplish that when many schools around the country and universities have not been able to. So great planning by our team and great engagement and support from our entire community. The year ahead is going to be very different. It's going to be unique. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be emotional. But I also think there's some really positive things that are going to come out of the year ahead. We're going to learn about resilience. We're going to have great bonding experiences. We're going to support each other. We're going to learn about empathy. And we're going to continue to learn. And we're going to continue to have the high standards that the Hill has always had around learning, co-curricular programs, and personal behavior and expectations. So I'm excited to get back to work and to see everyone and get everyone back on campus. Our plan is in many ways a compromise of different aspects of our community, different people making different efforts and different contributions. And it aligns perfectly with the last song of our, the last line of our school song, "The back of each, the strength of all." We all have to contribute to make this work. We can't make exceptions for individuals, because we're all part of a collective organic community that relies on everyone doing their share. So those words have never been more true than they are now. No plan is foolproof, and it's amazed me as I look at other schools and other colleges, the vast variety of plans that are out there and different approaches, from all online to all on campus to hybrid to different schedules and different calendars and different procedures. And I think every plan lines up with the resources and environment and particular circumstances of each individual school. So we've taken a multi-layered approach. As you've seen, our plan is over 50 pages long. We think we've taken every precaution that we can, and it creates a multi-layered approach so that if one system breaks down, there's another backup system, checks and balances. And we've relied on the best guidance available to us, both internally at our community and externally. We've relied on a lot of expert guidance, as you've seen in the plan. And then the last thing I would say, as with respect to many of the questions that are going to be raised tonight, it's really important to remind all of us and for all of us to remember that we're opening school in the middle of a global pandemic, which hasn't gone away, and in many cases has gotten stronger or more dangerous in just the last few weeks or months. And so this is a huge challenge. And so we all have to make compromises of what we would normally expect at a school like Hill, so that we can continue to be together, that we can continue to learn and grow, and that we can continue to develop the relationships that are at the core of the Hill experience. So, you know, I've joked that could be my answer to every question. You know, yes, that's what we're doing because we're opening school amidst a global pandemic. I'll give you better answers than that, but at the core, everything we're doing here is in response to a really challenging situation with COVID-19. The agenda for tonight and questions that we're going to address. First of all, I want you to know that it is currently 7:36 p.m. on July 23rd, and that's as current as our plans are. And it's possible that they could change later tonight or tomorrow or the next day. I have never been in a situation that has been this dynamic before. We get news every hour, whether we're awake or we're asleep. I never know what I'm going to wake up to the next day in terms of what the new COVID-19 numbers are going to be, or procedures or restrictions. So we think we have a very solid plan. We hope that we get to implement our plan as it currently stands. But just know that everything we say tonight is subject to change, and we're going to continue reviewing it. And I encourage you to stay close to your email and to your phone messages, and stay in touch with the news, because if you see something, feel free to share it with us, and we'll do the same. We will communicate a lot between now and August 24th, so please stay tuned. I'm going to go through what I think are the top 10 most important aspects of our plan, especially those areas that have changed in the last few months, since many of you may have been on a previous call or seen earlier plans. And I'm going to highlight those. I'm going to ask you to please hold your questions until we get to the Q&A. We've received a number of questions. We've collected them. We've organized them. We're going to address them tonight. We've addressed some of them in advance. My guess is that most of your questions will be answered by the time, in about 45 minutes or so, when we get to the Q&A. And I hope that you can hold it until then, and we'll address it. There are going to be some questions that we can't answer tonight, either because we don't have enough time, or they're just directly in the plan, and we may refer you to the FAQs, or they may be very specific to you or to your family, and we'll try to address those separately, or they may not have an answer. Quite frankly, there's still some unknowable things in this world that we're operating in right now. Mrs. Hamilton Kirk, who is manning the question and answer board, will also try to direct you to parts of our plan. And I will just note that we will respond to you after this if we don't get to your questions. But if you use the anonymous function in the questions, we won't know who it's from. So we won't be able to respond to you directly, although we might add it to the FAQs tomorrow on the website. We certainly won't hold any question, even tough questions, against anyone. So don't feel like you need to use the anonymous thing. Otherwise, we may not get to your question. And we will be posting this recording tomorrow. We'll update all the FAQs on the website. The plan is occasionally revised and updated, so please do stay close to our 2021 webpage. So without further ado, our top 10 list for the parents on the line that maybe were big fans of David Letterman. I was too, and so we'll do our top 10. So this hasn't changed very much, but our campus wellness level has been at the center of our planning process. We put some more details in this plan. You know that we have 5 levels. We actually have a 6th level, which is considered opening conditions. We're starting in opening conditions. We'd like to get to Bravo at some point this year. We don't think it's likely we're going to get to Alpha, at least not until the spring. And that's basically back to pre-COVID time period. And everything we're doing here tonight and on the plan and in the year and months ahead is to keep us in Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie. We're really trying to avoid Delta and Echo. Some of that is outside of our control. This is not just the level of COVID-19 on our campus. This is in our community, in our region, in our county, and in our state, and in our country. You clearly can't read this on your screen, but you can find the hyperlink in our plan. This is the campus wellness level, the CWL grid, as we call it. You can see on the right-hand side is the opening conditions. The grid is actually much larger than this, but these are sort of the public aspects of the grid that you can see that apply to different aspects of student life. So I hope you'll study this. We will be notifying students and parents of any changes in the campus wellness level. We don't think it will change very often. Escalating or de-escalating will be a pretty big event, but we will, we'll have a CWL notice in every Today on the Hill e-newsletter that goes out to our students and faculty and employees every day. And then once a week, we'll update parents on any changes in the CWL through the parents newsletter. This is a little bit of a closer look at our opening conditions, CWL. I hope you've had a chance to look at this, but it's pretty straightforward. It's sort of somewhere between Charlie and Delta. We're being cautious here, and these could change as well. We're obviously going to be in person in our classrooms wearing masks and fully distanced 6 feet apart in the classroom. One thing that we have added recently is the addition of protective eyewear, which will be issued to every student when they arrive on campus. I'll show you a picture of that later. That will be for when students are facing each other in breakout groups, or perhaps in the dining hall, or in one-on-one meetings with college counselors or the like. Our dining and meals will be a served buffet. That will be, every station will have a staff member serving the meals. We'll have staggered periods so that we can keep the density in the dining hall low. There's designated seating. You'll be having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a different group that you're in, a pre-existing group, and we'll be using a lot of outdoor options around campus. Athletics and training, we're going to start with training and skill building in flocks within your teams. So whatever you're signed up for, you'll be in this flock group, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more, but it's a group of 4 students. It will remain consistent, and there'll be physical distancing, and wherever possible, we'll be outdoors for athletics in opening conditions. Day students are arriving just before classes and leaving just after their afternoon activities. We've just gone over day students with that group. There are other co-curriculars other than sports, of course, and those will also be operating with physical distancing and in small groups of 4. So if you're in theater, you'll be with a larger group, but you'll be rehearsing or doing theater tech or what have you with a small group of the same group of students. For our boarding students, there will be no parent visits to campus until the end of September, as long as we can maintain our campus wellness level. And those parent visits will be limited to 3 hours. They'll be outdoors. You'll be able to interact with your child only, and you'll be required to wear masks and go through the appropriate screening. So we'll get you more information about that. I know that's a hardship, but please understand that we're trying to get to a really strong baseline for our campus health get our feet under us really before the school year gets underway and we start introducing more elements into campus. I don't mean to call parents elements, but you get my point. Dormitory living, we have different dormitory groups, but in opening conditions, we're going to limited unmasked interaction is just with your roommates, what we call droves, but still trying to maintain physical distancing even in the rooms. So spreading the beds apart, no bunk beds. We probably shouldn't use a bunk bed icon there. Masks and eyewear. I've explained the eyewear. Masks are pretty much required in all indoor locations, in class, for students and adults, anywhere the physical distancing is not 100%, as well as in the dorms if you're not in your dorm room. There will be no campus leaves, again, similar to the parent visits until early October. We just are trying to keep campus as healthy as possible, so there'll be no weekend leaves at all until October. We will allow food delivery. It's going to be sent to the CFTA parking lot. It'll be monitored and supervised. It'll be cashless, curbside, basically, and only on weekends in certain hours. We'll have limited gatherings around campus, 25 people or less, with physical distancing and only outdoors. So we won't have any large gatherings indoors, and we'll be physical distanced and masked during those. We may have some limited admission visitors to campus during opening conditions or in the fall. They won't have any interaction with our students. They'll be toured by adults or self-tours. They'll be fully geared up in PPE, and they won't be entering any of our indoor spaces. Number 2 is our pre-arrival quarantine and testing protocol. This has changed a little bit and will continue to change. Basically, you can see here that every member of our community, faculty and students alike, domestic, day, boarding, international, are all quarantining before arriving on campus for 14 days. In some cases, our international students, some of you who may be on the line tonight, have to quarantine twice, once in a neutral country, and then again when they come to the United States. So I know this is a huge sacrifice for everyone who's doing this, but we will be sending out very clear quarantine guidelines. I think some of them are already posted. This is strict. This is really strict. This is not, I'm going to quarantine at home, but I'm going to go to my club sports practice, or I'm going to go to my big family gathering, or I'm going to go to church. This is stay at home. This is stay at home, limit interaction, physical distancing, even from your household members wherever possible, taking all the necessary precautions, really only leaving home or where you're staying for the essentials. And when you do leave home, to follow the guidelines around masking and hand washing and physical distancing. The testing protocol, the world is changing very rapidly, as I'm sure you're all aware. We had a very solid testing protocol in place where we were mailing everyone a test kit a couple weeks before they were going to arrive. There were certain dates, and for a variety of reasons, that testing protocol is no longer sustainable exactly how we described. Two things have happened. One, the cases around the country have risen dramatically. And as a result, the testing facilities, which are often centralized, are overwhelmed. So the timing, it takes longer. And also the Department of Health and Human Services has commandeered almost all of the small testing devices that schools and other institutions are using. And so we're shifting gears on this. We are permitting students at this point and encouraging students at this point to have a test done at their home or where they're quarantining. If you're quarantining on campus or at the hotel near campus, we will arrange for that testing. And you'll be getting more detailed information on this in the coming week in terms of other alternatives if you can't arrange for testing where you're quarantining. Dr. Spencer, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that covered it well. Thank you.
I would say the biggest change that we've made in the last month or so has been a shift from our normal 7-period schedule, rotating schedule, to a modified block schedule for the autumn session at least. And we'll talk about what happens in the spring in a little bit. Hopefully, most of you have been able to figure out how this works. Block schedule has been around for a long time. A number of our teachers have operated in block schedules at other schools. It's not something that we've done at Hill, at least not in this regard. I mean, basically what it entails is intense, longer classes where you're carrying either 3 or 4 classes at a time. And in a shorter period of time, you're completing a term's work. So you can see here that this is the autumn session, what we're calling the combination of our modified fall and winter terms. In the first 18 class days, students will take up to 3 of their up to 7 classes. Students at Hill take between 5 and 7 classes. So they will take up to 3 classes. They may have a free period, they may not. And they will only take 3, there will only be 3 periods a day. And they'll do that for 18 days. And in that 18 days of classes, they will complete what they would have completed in a normal fall trimester, in those 3 classes only. Their other 4 classes, or up to 4 classes, they'll then shift to those 4 classes, putting aside the first 3 classes, and they'll do a 24-day rotation for those 4 classes. We're fortunate that Mrs. Dolhoff, a former chair of our math department, is our dean of faculty, and she figured this out. Because we have 7 periods, we have to have a 3-term block, and a 3-course block and a 4-course block. And the 4-course block has to be longer because we still only have 3 periods in the day. And then it repeats in the winter term with I think it's 14 class days being remote after Thanksgiving. Now, why did we do this? This is something that many schools take a lot of time to transition to or transition away from. And as you probably saw in our plan, we did a lot of research, and we actually hired 2 Cornell professors to analyze the network of students on our campus and create a mathematical model for how a virus might spread at the Hill through close contact. And we looked at all different aspects of our community, our academics, our residential life, our dining, chapel, advisory, and other things. And what we found was that the primary mathematical driver behind a tightly knit network was, of course, the number of classes that a student takes and the number of students within those classes. So by limiting the number of classes to 3 or 4 at a time, we reduce almost by half the number of close contacts that a student has at any given time. And that's really important because number one, it keeps our community healthy. And number two, if someone in our community does come down with COVID-19, it limits the number of other students who may have to take a reaction to that, like a quarantine, or who may get sick. So we made the decision based on that empirical data to move to this. It's going to be different. Our teachers are working very hard right now to prepare for this and shift gears. We've got a lot of good leadership and professional development around this. And I think our students will really enjoy it. The second main reason we went to this is because we're very concerned about the mental health of our students and faculty during this period of great transition and stress and anxiety. And by reducing the number of classes and the workload and the amount of different assignments that you have to do at any one time, we think we can manage that stress and anxiety better. So it's going to be new for all of us, and I think we're really excited about it. To get a glimpse, I hope you've studied this a little bit in the plan. The 3-day blocks and the 4-day blocks, the days look basically the same. There's staggered breakfast. There's 2 periods, 2 80-minute periods before lunch. There's 2 lunch periods, which also act as an advisory and chapel rotation. And then there's 1 80-minute class after lunch, followed by your transition to your afternoon activities and evening hours. And then we do it again. We do it 3 days in a row. It rotates, which the order of the classes rotate. And the reason they rotate is that so the same period doesn't fall after lunch every day, because we have some students who are going to be remote in difficult time zones. And in China, a 1:40 p.m. class is 1:40 a.m. in the morning. And it's just unrealistic for our students to have the same period every day in that time slot. So the 4-day rotation, 4-block rotation, it just lasts longer. It lasts for 24 days, but it's the same bell schedule. Students will get really used to this. And there's a little bit more passing time between classes for students to get from one classroom to the next. My favorite part of the plan that we've developed is because I like to think I have a good sense of humor and try to insert some fun and joy into what we're doing this year. There's a lot of seriousness going around. We are the Hill Rams, and so we're breaking up into shepherding groups at the Hill. So this cute, fuzzy, furry little ram, it is a ram, it's got horns. It doesn't look like our bighorn ram that we have on campus, but it's a little bit more comforting, I hope. We are organizing in just about everything we do into small groups that stay consistent throughout a time period, again, to limit close contact, and in the event that someone does get ill, that it limits the number of other individuals that have to respond accordingly. So we have droves, which are two Hill Rams. That might be roommates or lab partners or a carpool, something like that. We have a flock, which is 4. This is 2 dorm rooms, an academic breakout group, maybe a larger carpool group, or an athletics workout group. And then we have a herd, and a herd is a larger group. That might be a dorm floor. It might be your academic sections, which are mostly limited to 12. It may be a co-curricular activity or program, or an advisory, something along those lines. It doesn't have to be 12, but it's generally 12 or less in a herd. So we'll get used to that. We'll get used to seeing our little furry little friend here. We'll try to come up with a good name for him. One thing which I'm certain you've noticed is that in our plan, we are asking every member of our community, students and adults, to sign a community health compact, which is very strict. And whatsoever things are true at the Hill has never been more true We are asking everyone to contribute to the well-being of the community, and we take this really seriously. And you'll see that there are significant repercussions for not complying with the health compact, and that goes for students and adults alike. And we hope that people will do this. It's going to be obviously self-enforced in the first instance, and we hope that we won't have to get involved beyond that. So we hope, we've always had a high level of integrity at the Hill School and expectations of our students, and this only emphasizes that here during COVID-19. We are also asking all students and parents and employees to sign a waiver. As I mentioned before, there is risk involved with operating a residential school during COVID-19, and we want to make sure that everyone's fully aware of that. Both of these forms are on my backpack in senior systems. If you haven't had a chance to sign them, please do take care of that prior to arriving on campus. I think they're actually due earlier than that. There are other forms there as well that you can sign electronically, and there'll be some more forms coming out, like the acknowledgement of our student handbook. So please have a look at those and take care of that. The calendar, this has been pretty much our consistent calendar for the last few months, but I just want to reemphasize it in case you haven't fully grasped it yet. There is this arrival period, which I shared before in terms of the quarantine and the different dates for arriving on campus. You will be getting an email in the next, I would say, week or so that gives you your exact arrival date on campus. Some of you already know this, especially if you're an international student or a boarder from a distant state that's quarantining on campus, or an impacted state. You'll all be arriving on August 5th, and then the quarantines begin, and then we will arrive on campus between August 19th and August 23rd. All students will arrive during that period, and we'll get started on the 24th, where we begin our autumn session. As I said before, we're calling the combination of the fall and winter terms the autumn session. You can see the yellow block there is the Thanksgiving recess, followed by remote learning for all students. And then we kick off the hibernation, which starts with our winter holiday recess. Rams don't hibernate, but we couldn't come up with a better term. There's actually a British term called, I think it's called down wintering, but that didn't really sound very catchy. During the hibernation, we have the H term, which we're thrilled about. It's really coming together nicely. Ellen Dietrich and a team of other faculty members and staff members have been developing that. A lot more information coming out on that. The H term is highly encouraged for all students. It's required for any students who are on campus during the hibernation, which I'll mention in a moment. You may also apply to do an independent self-designed program. You can petition for that. That can be in addition to the H-term coursework or in lieu of. Also during the H-term, your teachers from the fall and winter terms, your autumn session teachers for year-long courses, will be assigning you weekly assignments, which are required, that are review assignments and maintenance assignments, so that you stay on top of your classes, so that when you get to the spring term, the review period will be relatively short. During the hibernation, in the event that we are able to safely play winter sports, we will have a low residency program on campus for winter varsity athletes whose teams are competing and which teams can only find competition during the winter season. We will also potentially have some international students on campus who are unable to either go home or to their host family. Students will be rearranged on campus during that time in consolidated team dorms, possibly international student dorms. There'll be very little interaction between those teams, and we are hoping to have single rooms for those students. When we get to the spring term, we'll have a 2-week early spring recess, which we may have to use for another staggered return to campus, or it may be an extension of winter athletics, or maybe an early return for spring athletes. We don't know that yet, it's too far away. But the spring term, the beauty of our block schedule is that we have a modified block, is that we've arranged it so that we can revert back to our 7-period schedule if conditions allow. So we would go back to our normal schedule from last year, Or if conditions don't allow us to do that, if COVID-19 is still a serious situation and we're still in Charlie or Delta, we may stay with the block schedule, and we can do that without a problem. So that's the overview for the year. Number 7 is our co-curricular programs. We know how important co-curriculars are to our students and families. Athletics, theater, yearbook, community service, debate. We've got such great programs and such great participation. But I would say maybe just slightly above the uncertainty around testing is the uncertainty around co-curriculars and athletics especially, and interscholastic athletics especially. You don't have to look far to see in the news that professional sports programs are really struggling. College seasons have been canceled. High school leagues have been canceled or postponed or delayed. We have not made a decision about this yet, but we are certainly concerned about the viability of being able to play in the fall season, or at least right away. We have suspended all interscholastic play until at least September 9th, and at which point we hope to have an update. A lot of this is out of our hands. Even if we really want to participate in interscholastic competition, that takes 2 or more than 2 to tango here. So we have peer schools, we play across state lines, every state is responding differently to this. And so we're working really hard to figure this out. We know how important it is, and we'll get you information as soon as we have it. In the event that we cancel interscholastic competition, we will continue with our fall athletic teams and our other co-curricular teams. Students can train and practice and develop skills and strength and conditioning. And if they choose to, they can also switch to a different co-curricular activity, maybe one that they've always wanted to try. And we potentially would be adding some different kinds of co-curricular afternoon activities. But the afternoons will be full, they'll be robust, they'll be active, they'll be healthy, no matter what. And if we can safely compete, we will. And we don't know much yet about, we're really focused on the fall season. We don't know much yet about the winter season or spring season, and we'll continue to communicate on that level. And thanks for your flexibility and patience with us. We know how important this is. Here you see our friendly furry ram again. This is our safeguarding brand at Hill. And so there are a lot of things that we are going to do at Hill that maybe others don't this year, but at Hill, we wear masks. At Hill, we're going to wear eyewear when we're facing each other in classrooms and in other settings. At Hill, we're going to practice really good hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. At Hill, we're going to be strict on physical distancing. We are going to respect each other's health and well-being, and our families' health and well-being, and our community's health and well-being. One thing that I'm excited that we have been able to confirm in the last week or two is 2 different technology approaches to contact tracing. We certainly will be doing manual contact tracing. All of our wellness team has completed I think it's a 6-hour course with Johns Hopkins in terms of how to do manual contact tracing, but that will be aided by 2 different devices. The first is a phone app called Trace Innovations. That is an app that every student and employee will run in the background of their phone. And it works in conjunction with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and I think also GPS. And likewise, every member of our community, as well as visitors, will be issued one of these wristbands. They sort of look like a Fitbit, and they carry a Bluetooth emitter, and that sends out a signal. And you don't have to be carrying your phone when you're using this, but it will send out a signal to our Wi-Fi system. And both of these systems can locate everyone in our community within I think it's 3 to 6 feet of each other. And so if someone becomes ill with COVID-19, our ITS department can run a report to figure out who that person has been in close contact with while using one of these devices for 15 minutes or more. It will also aid us in our cleaning of the school high traffic areas, and we'll also be able to know where there's physical distancing issues in terms of tight hallways and that sort of thing. So we're really excited about this. You'll get the app when you register on campus, and students will be issued a wristband, which come in lots of different colors. So hopefully they'll be not too intrusive. We are using a variety of different daily screening methods. First, all students will continue to use WAVE, which is our existing student location app and permission app. The alumni of the Hill who created this have modified it this summer to also include a daily symptoms check. You'll start using this in the quarantine period twice a day, and then depending on the campus wellness level, it will go down to once a day on campus before you leave your dorm room in the morning. And if you have any symptoms, it will instruct you to stay where you are and contact the health center. Otherwise, it will sort of give you a green light to go out onto campus. We're also using these HIK Vision welcome kiosks around campus. These are mostly for day students or visitors to campus or commuting employees. It includes facial recognition, temperature checking, and symptom checking. And that is just one more layer of security for our campus so that everyone feels safe and is safe. In the event of illness on campus, and this is COVID-19 illness as well as symptomatic COVID-19 but unconfirmed and other respiratory illness, as we've said all along, we are going to follow the public health guidelines, and if you are sick, you will have to isolate for the stated period of time until you're healthy and can return to campus. If you are a close contact of someone who becomes ill, you will have to quarantine. And that quarantine will either be at home, if you live within 500 miles of campus, or it will be at a family, host family or guardian, hopefully within a 2 to 3 hour drive. We have some, but very limited space on campus. We have about 20 beds on campus in the event that the system breaks down. But this is really, at the end of the day, why we're taking all of these other precautions, because removing a student or students from our community, having them be remote, imposing on our families or host families or guardians, being removed from your activities and your friendships and your dorm rooms, we want to do everything we can to avoid that. So we expect it will happen, but that's why we're taking everything so seriously. The challenge that we face is that with testing right now being somewhat delayed around the country, and we hope that that will come down a bit in the coming weeks, we may have to quarantine and isolate people who we are not sure of whether they have COVID-19 or not. And that's going to be frustrating for parents and for students. And I just remind you, we are living in a global pandemic, and it's what we have to do to maintain a healthy community. And it's why, for example, we are basically going to a quarter of our population during the flu season, because basically we would have to isolate anyone who has flu-like symptoms. The boarding experience and residential life, I think I've gone over most of this, but your morning protocol, you'll do your daily symptom checking in your room, you'll attend breakfast, and you'll sit with your residential shepherding group. You will have the 3-class block rotation that I mentioned, including the chapel, lunch, and advisory flex period, which will be designated. You'll sit with your advisory at lunch. You'll have designated student areas during your free periods. So if you have a free period, you'll be assigned where to go. That may be your dorm room, it may be the library, it may be somewhere along those lines, but you'll need to be there. There's no sort of free rambling time around campus this year, unfortunately. Then you'll attend your afternoon activity and follow whatever guidelines are in place for that. You'll attend dinner with your co-curricular group, again, following the protocols there in assigned seating. And then there'll be study hall with remote extra help sessions in the evenings. And we've added an evening snack coming to the dormitories or being picked up by students as takeaway. For now, we're starting with study hall being in the dormitories and all extra help being remote. So you'll make an appointment with teachers or peer tutors or with a classmate to do that work together. So how'd I do? We got to, it's been about 40 minutes, and we're going to get to the questions now. I've organized the questions by topic, and I'll be calling on our panelists to chime in. And then when I give you the green light, you can add questions if they haven't been answered. So thanks for your patience. So what will the on-campus quarantine look like? Mr. Baum, could you, and Ms. Cho, could you help us with that one?
Sure. So the on-campus quarantine in August will it will look like a quarantine in the sense that students will be in probably their rooms for the year. I think that decision was made in the last couple of days. They'll be allowed to leave their room for different things, like we'll open some space around the dining hall for meals and allow for some time for physical exercise outside, probably like signing up for it. So it will be a quarantine though. So they're by design, there won't be a lot of in-person physical interaction the way any quarantine would be at this time.
One thing sorry, go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so the library will be open from like 10 to 4 for students to use, but social distancing will be practiced and students are required to wear masks.
Thank you. There'll also be a number of online activities. A number of our faculty have volunteered to create some fun activities throughout the day. Our counseling office will be checking in with students. There'll be some physical activity, as Mr. Baum said. You'll be able to get outdoors, but it'll be a quarantine, and you'll also be you'll do your twice daily screening. You may have some contact with the wellness center for testing and for other things like that. Okay. Can parents help children move into their rooms? I'm going to answer this. So sometime in the next few days, I think Monday, don't hold me to exactly Monday, but Mr. Genikis in the Community Life Office will be sending an email out to all boarding student parents who can create, I think it's a 2 or 3 hour appointment to come to campus with both parents, only parents, not siblings, to set up a student's room in late July into August before the arrival period begins on August 19th. So that'll have to be scheduled. You'll have to wear masks. It'll be staggered, so there's no overlap. But you will have a chance if you're local enough to do this. And I know not everyone is, to help move your child into the room, make the bed, get things set up, and then return home. And then when you do come for registration to drop students off, you will not be able to enter campus. And if that's your first time to campus, there will be a lot of people there to help with the move-in. You'll sort of open the back door of your car and we'll take all the stuff out and we'll get it to the dorm room before you know it. And there'll be help setting up rooms from dorm parents and prefects and that sort of thing. Parents will, I think, be nearby until the registration period process is over, just to make sure everything goes okay and a student is healthy and well and can enter campus. And then it'll be a goodbye. So it's going to be difficult, but we appreciate your understanding of, we really just don't want to introduce an additional 1,000 people into campus in a 3-day period. If I am quarantining away from home or on campus, and where will I complete my COVID-19 testing? What if I can't schedule a test or my results still aren't back? Dr. Spencer?
That's a great question. So we are currently in talks with 2 small commercial laboratories who have very short turnaround times on their PCR tests. So we are looking to offer our families options for how to get that testing done if it's not convenient or it can't be done through the primary care physician, as is clearly the case in someone who is traveling away from home. So stay tuned for a message in the next week. We should have much more detail on how to help you accomplish that. And certainly for our students who are on campus or in the hotel under our care, that will be handled by an on-campus program.
Thank you. May I play club sports during home quarantine? No. You'll note that our quarantine restrictions are to avoid large gatherings, to avoid large any major interaction. And so all of the things that come with quarantine, and that means no club sports during home quarantine. So please understand that we are taking this very seriously, and we would hate to have to shift a student to become a remote student because they didn't follow the quarantine expectations. And more importantly, we don't want you to get sick. How will the transition, I'm sorry, this is covered for me here. How will the transition from one block rotation to another work in terms of coverage and review? Katie?
Yeah, so it's an understandable question. It's a unusual and pretty elegant solution to the needs that we had. But it does create a new, teaching environment. So the first answer is that the 80-minute classes will allow us for a lot, a deep dive into the subject matter. We will be able to cover the content that we normally have. It will just be sort of presented and digested by the students in a different way. Each of the rotations will end cleanly. And then the next round of classes will begin. And we considered this for a long time, and it was important for us to allow students to focus just on one rotation at a time, with one exception, and that is new language learners. So New World Language and Classics language learners will be getting some periodic maintenance work that those folks felt was really sort of pedagogically imperative for those kids to learn at that level. So at the beginning of the following rotation, when the classes that you hadn't had for 18 or 24 days begin again, the teachers will have to engage in a little bit of review and make sure that students, remember the parts and pieces from the previous work to pick up again. We are, as Zach mentioned earlier, building a lot of professional development around this, and we feel pretty good about being able to deliver a really robust program despite the changes.
Thanks, Katie. Will modified block schedule be used in the spring? I think I've answered that already, but basically we've left our options open. We'll either return to our normal schedule or we'll continue with the block schedule, and it has all been lined up so we can do either one. Will boarders and day students be together in classes? The answer to that is yes. We are organizing our classes normally how we would. We have capped most of our classes at 12 student section sizes. There are some larger sections which will use much larger spaces, but we have made sure that physical distancing is happening in every classroom setting depending on the number of students. What will study hall be like? Mr. Baum.
I'd say in a lot of ways, study hall will be the same as what it normally is, meaning the dorms will be quiet for study conditions throughout study hall, with many students, if not most, being in their rooms studying quietly. The difference, I would say, in COVID times is that it'll be almost all students studying in their rooms quietly during that time. We are exploring possibilities of having the library open on a limited basis, probably by dorm, maybe rotating by nights. As Zach mentioned, or maybe Katie also mentioned, we'll also allow, or we'll be doing all extra help and tutoring, seeing the various extra help venues over Zoom or other types of online resources for all students, boarders, and day students. So we're prepared to have all students in their rooms, but we also want to give more options if we can safely offer them. And that's something that we'll keep looking into.
And Mr. Baum, there's a related question which in the Q&A box, which is, will the teachers be proactive in reaching out to students for extra help, or will the students have to be the ones to reach out? And I think I can answer that, which is going to be both. Our teachers will make sure they're available. If a student is struggling in a particular area, they'll certainly encourage them to take advantage of that time or to use fellows or peer tutors. And at the same time, students will be expected, as they always are, to advocate for themselves at the Hill School and to reach out and schedule that time. Okay, can I still take music lessons? I think the answer to that is yes. We're working on this. Music, it depends on which instrument, has different expectations in terms of, respiratory issues and the like. But we do intend to have music lessons on campus. And if not on campus, we can continue with those virtually as well. Ms. Hudak, do you have any other answers to that I may have missed?
No, I am actually glad that you took that one, because it was something that I was curious about.
All right, well, we'll have to talk to our music department tomorrow. Please explain the restriction on club sports and outside activities for all students. Can that be reconsidered? So I'll answer the second part first. We're not going to reconsider it at this point. We may reconsider it later in the year as our CWL and the world improves, hopefully. But the rationale here is that we are doing everything we can to keep our community safe. We are doing everything we can to screen and monitor and social distance and mask all the people in our community, and that's about 700 people plus extended family. Once you start adding club teams, the multiplier exacerbates everything. And our understanding, our firsthand understanding of club sports is that they are not following the same heightened level of health and safeguarding protocols as we are following on campus. They are not doing the same level of screening, quarantining, testing, isolating, masking, and I've seen it firsthand with my own children, and so we just can't take this risk. And it's not just club sports. We're concerned about all large outside activities. It could be a dance troupe, it could be a singing group, it could be church. These are what are known as super spreader events, and we are just not willing to take that chance. So if these are more important to you than being on campus, there are options. You can become a remote student, and you can stay a remote student until you're finished with your club sports and return to campus following our quarantine protocols. I hope that's not the case. I hope that you value what we're doing on our campus, the community that we're building, the activities that we're offering, and certainly the academic programs, that you would prefer to prioritize that. Will there be any modifications to the dress code? On a lighter topic, Mr. Baum.
Lighter topic.
Maybe not at the Hill School.
This is a heavy topic, at least during normal times. We want to be able to preserve as much as we're able to, as far as like how people identify with their experience at the Hill School. And not that everybody loves the dress code by any means, but I think that by and large, people do associate it with their experience at the school. So we're doing our best to preserve the dress code. At the same time, with the earlier start in August, we expect there to be higher temperatures. So we'll be realistic about modifying the dress code, and I will communicate more specifics in an upcoming letter so that all families can sort of pack accordingly. But you can expect something along the lines of, still having collared shirts and having shorts instead of pants, and maybe even having open toe shoes in some cases. But that will be weather dependent. So if, by some miracle, it's down into the 60s or 70s in late August, it will be the regular dress code that we're used to, that we associate with the school. But assuming there are higher temperatures at the beginning of the year, we will lighten up the dress code so that people can be more comfortable and healthy at the same time, because there's other precautionary health measures that need to be taken in addition to the COVID ones.
Well, Mr. Baum, I will throw in on a lighter note thing. Some of you have seen me on these calls earlier in the summer. Notice that I'm clean shaven today, in honor of the Hill dress code, and so that my mask will fit me more snugly. So hopefully that part of our dress code will remain intact. And also, Mr. Baum, I got you. Someone told me it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. Baum.
Believe it or not, that's not a joke. It would be funny if we did that like as a joke on these calls to lighten the mood, but it is true.
All right, how will the school prevent students from congregating in large groups during free time? Mr. Baum, I'll leave this one with you again.
There aren't that many times, even when times are normal, there aren't that many occasions when students can convene without active supervision. That's one of the things we pride ourselves on at this school. That said, the few times where that does come up during the day, for example, when students are free, they might, congregate in the student center during normal times. We're reducing those opportunities, not because we don't trust the students, but because we feel strongly that we need to do everything we can to prevent even accidental interactions that might be compromising the safety that we're trying to commit to. So I think the way we'll do that is by actively supervising and limiting the amount of free spaces students can congregate. We're not eliminating opportunities for students to interact, but we're certainly regulating those more to make sure that we're positioning themselves as well as we can.
Thanks, Mr. Baum. Can students receive packages in mail, Mr. Baum?
I think so. We've talked.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked. It's just like an interesting thing. Like we've literally talked about every square inch of the Hill program in the last couple of months. We've definitely talked about this, but I can't honestly remember the exact resolution here. Sorry.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Packages, Amazon, and mail are certainly allowed. Depending on the CWL, they may be quarantined for a day or 24 hours. So I would not encourage you to order fresh food or something that might melt. But yes, packages and mail will be, they may be delivered slightly differently, and they may be delivered directly to the dorms instead of to your mailbox or to the mailroom. All I can say is God bless Rhonda, our mail person. She's been going around campus with packages and mail all year. Okay, how will new students meet people beyond their shepherding groups? I'm going to answer this one myself. You're going to have a lot of different shepherding groups. So you'll have 3 or 4 classes per semester with 12 students in them. You'll have your dorm group. You'll have your co-curricular group. You'll have your advisory. You'll be interacting with students online. And I'm sure I've missed some other groups. And then there will be opportunities on weekends to interact with other students, of course, maintaining physical distancing and that kind of thing. But there, especially for new students, this will take a little bit longer than it normally does at Hill. As I usually say, it takes about 3 days for you to know everyone at the Hill School under normal circumstances. So maybe it'll take 6, maybe it'll take 10, maybe it'll take a month. But I do believe that we will find creative ways to be a community and to get to know each other, and that's students and faculty alike. Will restrictions be modified based on the CWL? And Dr. Spencer, do you want to take this one?
Certainly. Yes, so all of our campus operations are laid out based on the threat to our campus health and safety. So depending on how much viral activity there is in Pottstown, in the surrounding county, anything on campus, we're tracking that very carefully, and then we can relax if we're able to move. If things are looking good, we're able to move more toward Bravo, for example, then all the restrictions loosen up in a commensurate fashion. Same thing happens if disease activity around us picks up, then we tighten up in an attempt to really keep our campus as safe and secure as we can.
Great, thank you. What if we can't find disinfectant wipes? So someone was reading our plan very carefully, and they noticed that students need to arrive with ample supply of disinfectant wipes for their room and for the bathroom and that sort of thing. It was a great question. I hadn't thought about it, and I know it's sometimes hard to find them. We'll have disinfectant wipes available. If you can't find them, you can purchase them at registration. They'll be pretty cheap, I'm sure. And there will be disinfectant wipes in every bathroom on campus. So those will be provided by the school. So don't worry too much about this one, but do your best for sure. Please share more info on parent visits and home leaves. Mr. Baum, could you take this one?
Yeah, I'm hoping to have details about that in the coming communication that I'll have in early August. But a general idea of it is that the parent visits, I think we're having 3 throughout the autumn, and they wouldn't begin until I believe the first weekend in October. We're aiming for those visits to be outdoors on campus, and they would last, a couple of hours. I'll be able to share more details with that in the coming days. We've been working on that more recently. We're just sort of waiting to get agreement from the different people involved. I should also add to that, any visitor to campus under any circumstances, including parents, we'll have like a registration for them that includes making sure that they've not been exposed to the best of our ability before coming to campus.
Thanks. And then on the home leaves, what we have said right now is under opening conditions and under Charlie, or certainly under Delta, students will be allowed one home leave weekend starting in early October through Thanksgiving. There will be no home leaves on the long weekend. We basically need to spread this around. And these are really meant to be restricted home leaves, going home, seeing your immediate family, not spending time outside of the house, not going to large gatherings, not going to activities or club sports or anything like that. They can also be at a hotel under the supervision of your parents if they live too far away for a home leave. But again, sort of following quarantine type conditions. And we will likely require you to test on your way back into campus so that we are, or maybe slightly after your return to campus.
Zach, just to add quickly, Zach, I just wanted to add quickly, sorry. I know we have plenty of new families on the call here. In regular years, anytime a student leaves campus, they submit a request online to the dean's office with the details, and that request also goes to families. That way, students and their parents are on the same page as well as the school, and that's certainly the system we'll continue to use, even though it's just going to be 0 to 1 time. And that's the other point I wanted to make. You don't have to do one of those weekends off campus if you can't make arrangements or you don't wish to leave for one weekend.
And if things get better, we may allow 2, but count on 1 and hope that stands. Why are admission visits allowed on campus? So first of all, we're a school that we need to keep being a school, and we want great kids at Hill every year. And there's only so much you can do virtually. We are limiting those depending on the campus wellness level. There will be almost no interaction, if any, with students. There will be no indoor interaction. It will be all physically distanced, as well as fully masked and perhaps other PPE as well. It's a pretty minimal risk that we're trying to accomplish there to maintain a full school. How will food delivery be arranged and supervised? Mr. Baum, the 20-second answer.
Deliveries will all be cashless, which most are anyways. They'll take place, over the different apps that facilitate that, but they'll only be able to happen on weekends during limited hours, during Saturdays and Sundays. And they'll actually be supervised by Sodexo, who does our food service, to make sure there's any necessary disinfectant and things like that. The school will be providing, as it says in the plan, a 4th meal to boarding students across campus Monday to Friday. So deliveries are just Saturday and Sunday, and they're all cashless.
Thank you. What will weekend activities be like? I'm going to take this one. The weekend activities will be limited. We're going to use that time to rest and recover. They will be in small groupings depending on the CWL. They'll be mostly, almost entirely on campus. There will be some remote or online activities as well. We're going to get creative so that day students can participate. Day students will not be allowed on campus, at least not to begin, for weekend activities. Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Genikis, who oversee our activities program, have come up with some great ideas. We're working on, I was just working with Mr. Hoffman today on making sure that we have a barber and a hairdresser and someone to do nails on campus every once in a while. So we're gonna keep it fun and interesting, but also a restful and quiet time as well. Will we be able to leave campus on our own? The answer to that is no, at least not until we're in Bravo or back to Alpha. There won't be day leaves walking into town. But we've done some things to make that easier. We're still having the on-campus delivery, and we are converting the campus store to more of a mini mart. There'll be options there for food and other sundries that you can buy on campus as well. Why will we be mostly living in double rooms? Given the rest of this question was given the expectation to be physically distant. The answer to this is really because that's what we have at Hill. We have a very limited number of single rooms, and we have roughly 400 boarders. And so we prioritize the single rooms for students who have serious underlying medical conditions in the first instance, and then they typically go to prefects or other senior students, depending on which dorm they're in. The state of Pennsylvania has been supportive of having double occupancy of rooms. We will try to physically distance in the rooms, but this is your shepherding group. This is your drove. And so it's in your best interest to stay healthy to protect your roommate and vice versa. Will there be laundry on each floor of the dorms? Any adjustment to the cost of laundry service? What are the precautions that the laundry service is using? So there will be laundry in each dorm, not on every floor. We have added machines, and we've made all of the machines free. The laundry service is a little bit more expensive this year. I'm not 100% sure why. I think it's because we're still on campus the same number of weeks. And we're still working out what the laundry service will be, if any, during the hibernation when students are on campus. The laundry service is taking, they do wear eyewear and gloves and masks when they're on campus and when they're handling student laundry and delivering it. I confirmed that today. When will we know about the status of fall sports? We are hoping to have an update by early September. If we know more before then, we will let you know. We have seen reports from other leagues in other parts of New England and the Mid-Atlantic, and we're hearing other things, but we are doing our best to work with our peer schools and leagues to get an answer and that's safe and healthy. Will student athletes train and have team practices if the fall season is canceled or postponed? Can students choose other options at this point? Yes, we will keep our teams together, and there'll be continued skill building and practicing and training if the fall season is canceled or postponed. Can students choose other options at that point? Yes, they can switch to one of our pre-existing options, or we will be potentially adding options if that comes to pass. If fall sports are canceled, can students play outside club sports? Nope, they cannot, unfortunately. If we're canceling fall sports and with all the precautions that we're able to take, outside club sports are even more concerning to us at that point, unless you're remote. Can Hill put the hockey rink ice down early in the fall? We are going to do our best to get the hockey rink ice down as early as we can. Our rink is not a year-round rink for a variety of reasons. We typically have the rink up in early October, mid to late October, and we'll try to get it down as early as we can, which could be a couple weeks earlier, but it's unlikely to be sometime in August or September. When will winter sports begin? Can winter varsity athletes come home for Thanksgiving and holiday recess? So we don't have an exact date for winter sports, and we're still waiting on fall sports. We are hearing most of our peer schools and leagues are starting to say that if they play winter sports, they won't begin until January. So if that trend continues, we would probably do the same. And as a result, winter varsity athletes would be able to go home for the Thanksgiving and holiday recess.
Tryouts are still
What will
scheduled
lower,
the first week of November, I think. I think you'd said that on the last call, Zach.
yeah, we'll still have our varsity tryouts in early November to determine what the winter varsity teams are.
Just noteworthy to distinguish between maybe competition might start later, but our winter season would begin on campus, presumably the same time we had always planned for it, even if competition is later.
True, but we may not be competing. We may not be on campus between Thanksgiving and the holiday recess as we've been in the past.
Right.
To be determined. What will low residency program be like for winter varsity athletes during hibernation? And this would be the same for international students. So you would be in consolidated dorms, hopefully in all single rooms. So you'd be consolidated by team. Our international students who cannot go home or to a host family would either be incorporated into one of the winter varsity teams or they would be in an international dorm. You would be practicing and training per normal. You would be completing your H-term coursework, and you'd be pretty much following a normal day other than that, with staggered meals and mostly limited to the dorm or to the athletic facility or maybe to the library for your H period. Which winter varsity teams will be staying on campus? Again, this is to be determined. What we've said is that it will be those teams who can safely compete and which cannot find competition in another season. So as an example to that, there may be some teams that can compete safely and those that can't. Depending on the nature of the sport. And then this hasn't been decided, but as an example, winter track, since that team can get competition in the spring with outdoor track, that may be the kind of team that does not stay on campus. Again, all to be determined. Can students work out in the weight room in free time? We are working on this. We'd like to be able to do this because it would spread we have a limited capacity in the weight room, and so it would spread students out over the course of the day. It probably will not be allowed in early morning hours during opening conditions, but we are working to get round-the-clock supervision in the weight room within a few weeks of the opening of school. So we do think that will be possible, and you'll be able to learn more about that when you arrive. Dr. Spencer, what is the status of COVID-19 in Pottstown? If classes started today, what CWL would we be in? Dr. Spencer? Apparently we've lost Dr. Spencer. So she answered this on the last one. Pottstown has been pretty low in terms of COVID cases. I believe there's about 139, I think is what she said, cases and less than 20 deaths during COVID-19. We are in Montgomery County, which stretches further down towards Philadelphia, including the Lower Marion and Norristown areas, and those have been more highly impacted. So we keep an eye on all of those stats. And if classes started today, we would probably be in Charlie. And I would say that our opening conditions are sort of a mix between Charlie and Delta, trying to create a healthy baseline. So Dr. Spencer just left, which means she'll be back in a minute. How will Hill ensure that students have complied with off-campus quarantine expectations? So we're taking everyone at their word. Everyone will sign the compact, the health compact, community health compact. They'll be tested. They'll have to present testing. You'll have to do your 2 daily check-ins. But beyond that, at the end of the day, it's up to you. And so if a student decides that they're not going to comply with the quarantine, they're putting our entire community at risk. And we think of that as being selfish. And we think of that as being non-compliant with the integrity that we expect of Hill students. And so there are serious repercussions if we find out about it. and we are a small world, a small community. Word travels fast at Hill. And so please, I just hope that we don't need to police this in any way. We're taking students at their word, but we will respond strongly. And as you've seen, students can be shifted to remote only students or suspended or even dismissed from the school for violations of the health compact. What type of eyewear is provided for students? I showed a picture of it. It is, there are safety glasses and there's over the glass safety glasses. And it's for when students are facing each other doing group work or one-on-one work in classes and in other settings. I did see a question here. If I have my own eyeglasses, do I need to wear the over the glass safety glasses? Dr. Spencer, are you back yet? I don't know about that question, so I'll get an answer for you. Where is the limited on-campus quarantine and isolation
I'm back.
space?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, great. If students have their own glasses, do they need to wear the over the glass glasses? Now I can't hear you. Okay. Where is limited on-campus quarantine and isolation space? That is located in the guest house on campus and in McCune Lodge, which is right on the western end of campus. And then we have some other spaces that we can flex to if needed. Will there be a tuition discount if a boarding student must quarantine or isolate? Tom, do you want to take this?
Yes, so there will not be a tuition discount if this is the case. And obviously the well-being and the health of the student is most important.
Thanks. What is the impact on tuition if a boarding student chooses to go remote for part all of the year? And what is the process of switching back? Back to you, Tom.
Yeah, this question came up a lot in the day, and I can see it in the Q&A. So students can switch to remote learning if they would like to do so, but if they choose to do so, rather. But there will not be a tuition rate change if you choose to do that. In the process, in terms of coming back to campus, is you have to notify us that you would like to do so, and then follow the proper medical procedures in terms of proper quarantine and health checks before you return.
Thanks, Tom. What is the impact on tuition if the school must close? I'll take this one. As many of the returning families on this call know, last spring, when the school closed or was required to close, we made a tuition adjustment to all boarding and day students. We're actually not required to do that under our tuition enrollment agreement, but I imagine if it's a long-term closure, we would do the same. We would work with our business office and our board of trustees, and it would be based on any savings that we were able to accrue as a result of the closure. Can boarding students switch to become day students? Tom?
It's a possibility, and again, I mentioned this in the day session, the day student session, that families, if this is a question for families, that they should just reach out to me directly.
Great. All right, so those were the pre-questions. I'm going to stop the share now, and we're going to get back to the Q&A. We have about 20 questions, some of which have been answered. Well, it looks like we've answered about 19 questions. And we have 20 open questions. So we're going to do this fairly rapid fire since we're nearing 9 o'clock. So the first question, will there be community service as an option? Sylvia, are you aware of whether we're having community service as a co-curricular option? You're muted, Sylvia. Sylvia, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I don't recall a specific discussion around community service. I suspect if there are things that could be done remotely or within safe social distancing, that might be a possibility. I'm not certain if one of our colleagues might have more information, but that's as much as I know at this time.
I think it's on the list, and I think you're right that it's going to be a wait and see what we can do. Some creative ideas coming out of our Hobart's Run office. Do we have to go to breakfast every morning? This is a boarding question from a sixth former, Mr. Baum.
Breakfast is not required. Dinner is now required. We certainly encourage all of our students to go to breakfast, though, for the health reasoning behind it.
Is breakfast required for new students and third formers?
It's more strongly encouraged for third formers, but it's not required for new students.
This is a first in 170 years.
We're
We've
not
never got away from required breakfast. Every third form SGA rep in the history of the Hill has run on a platform of getting rid of breakfast check-in, and it only took a global pandemic to
It's not permanent. In a year, I'm sure it'll be required for the next third form.
Okay. Mr. Baum, if a student has a car and can move in themselves, can they park their car, can they pack their car and leave it on campus?
No, boarders cannot have cars on campus during normal times or COVID times. Of course, a student may drive to school, but they can't even drive onto campus if they're a boarding student. And no boarding students can keep cars on campus.
Thank you. Dr. Spencer, for students who are negative, who test negative, but have been contact traced, that they may have been exposed, where and how long will they quarantine?
So let's do where first. Whenever possible, that should be home or with a host or guardian. As a last resort, we do have some spaces on campus for those who have extreme circumstances where there's no other option. As far as how long, that is for 14 days after the last contact with the sick individual. So it really depends on as that contact tracing unfolds, when that contact was, and then
Great, thank you. Ms. Hudak, Mrs. Hudak, can you give an example of what an H-term independent project might be?
Yeah, I think it's sort of the classic intern model. If you are, have a law office that you know of that might be able to hire you remotely if you're in a part of the country that has still high COVID rates, or if you're overseas, you might be able to go to an office in person, shadowing a professional. I think the possibilities right now are wide open. I also want to plug the really wonderful offerings that the faculty have put forth. I don't want to give away too much of it because there's going to be a wonderful unveiling of the course catalog, but there are a lot of really great offerings, and we hope that you can all get creative on your own and maybe tailor make your own experience as well.
Great. Dr. Spencer, what is the earliest date a student can be COVID tested to meet the requirement? I think Dr. Spencer's frozen again. Are you there, Dr. Spencer? I see you. Okay, well, we'll get back to that one. Will you be sure that Saturday classes do not conflict with the on-campus ACT and SAT administration dates?
Currently, the way we've unveiled this in the plan, the test needs
Spencer, you're doing your best Darth Vader on us. So, Ms. Hudak, back to you on the SAT and ACTs and Saturday classes.
No conflict.
Thank you. And I will say that we are a testing site for both, a limited testing site just for Hill students. So we'll follow our protocols for that. We're the only, as far as I know, we're the only school in the region that is a private testing site for both. So great work by our college counseling office. If local, would food deliveries be allowed by parents on the weekends? Mr. Baum, can parents become Grubhub drivers? Private Grubhub drivers?
Well, parents can visit on those visit dates on the weekends, so they can come and bring food for their students then.
Would we allow them to bring food and drop it off with cashless delivery without scheduling a formal visit?
No, we would not.
Okay.
I don't think we would.
I think I actually sort of, it's not one we've considered, but I think we would. If they want to drop off the food at the tent.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, this has changed in the last couple of days, but the drop-offs are actually going to happen by the dining hall. That way the Sodexo can facilitate it. But yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. Thank you.
There we go. Can students get their own eyewear for sanitary reasons? We are issuing brand new glasses to every student, and those will be theirs to keep. But if they want to bring their own, they can do that. Certainly, if they want to bring a different style or something like that, that's fine. Is asthma one of the health considerations for single rooms? Dr. Spencer, are you back with us? She's not. Okay, asthma is serious asthma. I think it's moderate to serious asthma is one of the health considerations that we would consider for single rooms, but you should reach out directly to the Wellness Center, to Mrs. Van Buren or to Dr. Spencer, and we can talk that through. If you live in one of the 15 restricted states, can you quarantine in New York or another state within driving distance of school? Yes, you can quarantine in any unrestricted state within driving distance of the school. Please keep an eye on the list of restricted states by Pennsylvania because it's changing fairly rapidly. During the quarantine time, will students have access to their belongings left on campus last term? Ms. Cho, do you have an answer to that?
Yes, so I believe our facility will move in their packages on the 27th. So July 27th. So even before the kids come back to the campus. So all their packages will be there in their dorm.
And since we've recently made the decision that quarantining will happen in your actual dorm room, or at least unless you have a roommate that's also quarantining, then it will be waiting for you upon arrival. Why are you allowing day students? If they were required to go remote, you would be eliminating your biggest exposure to an outbreak. Day students at the Hill are an incredibly important part of our community. As are our boarding students, as our international students. And we feel we made a plan that minimized the risk as much as possible and also maintained the important fabric of our community. That was our decision. So we are asking a lot of our day students. We're asking more of them because of that exposure risk. And we are holding them to a high standard. Thank you for your question. Can I get a COVID test rather than quarantine for 2 weeks? Yeah. You have to do both. Because the whole issue with the COVID test is you may be asymptomatic, you may not test positive, but you may be brewing COVID-19 and you may not become symptomatic or positive for 2 weeks. Will there be physical distancing at meals? Will each meal be with a different group? Mr. Baum.
Yes, there'll be physical distancing everywhere on campus that we facilitate. So in the dining hall, we're doing 3 different seatings. Zach may have mentioned on this call that it's what he called manual buffet, which means you go through a buffet line, but you're served by the employees who work for Sodexo. You'll be assigned the same seat for each meal. So breakfast seating will be by dormitory. That's optional for boarders. Lunch seating will be by advisor group, and dinner seating will be by your co-curricular, your after-school commitment. But there will be physical distancing. So what you think of as the dining hall, where you've got, the dining hall filled and each table has basically each seat filled. I think we're looking at to be at least 6 feet apart. It's 3 or 4 people tops assigned to a table. So there's different shifts for each meal to assure that we don't, that we have the right amount of numbers so that it can be appropriately physically distanced for each. The dining hall is, of course, one of our areas of intense scrutiny and adjustment from what we do normally. The good news is that Sodexo is one of the biggest organizations in the world that does catering and food service, and they're working even more closely with the state than probably a lot of school officials are. So they're doing a really, really excellent job working around the clock.
Thank you. Can students use face shields instead of masks? Dr. Spencer?
No, face shields are technically considered eye protection by the CDC. So the CDC still has been recommending that cloth face masks be used for individuals who are in indoor settings around others.
And can you also answer the follow-up question? Can you explain the reasoning behind the eyewear requirement? This is something we have not heard before from any agency as a precaution.
So COVID-19 is commonly thought to be transmitted
We're losing Dr. Spencer, so I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm going to become medical director here for 30 seconds. Basically, COVID-19 can enter the body through any opening, including eyes, nose, mouth, ears. So under state law in Pennsylvania, our students have to be facing forward and wearing masks in the classroom. And so in order to facilitate group work, if they have to face each other or be next to each other in a lab setting, we wanted to allow for to facilitate that. So we wanted to take extra precautions. And so it won't be used often, but it'll be something that students will just get more comfortable with as well. What happens if I can't cross the border? This is the Canadian border with my child. We're not sure yet. Do I have to find a family to quarantine later, or can it be done on the campus if I can't find a family? Yes, you can quarantine on campus or at the local hotel if you can't find a family. Please keep in touch with us. Do you have ACT test dates yet? Ms. Hudak, do we have dates yet?
We do not.
Okay. Do students have to take SATs or ACTs with masks on? Ms. Hudak.
Yes, masks are going to be required in all indoor settings as until things change. So yes.
We'll keep you updated on that. It may be that if we have really large physical distancing that we wouldn't have to do that, but I don't know. If we spread them out in the gym, but I don't know how that's going to work. When will the H-term course catalog be available? We will want to determine if an internship will be a better option, and those will have longer lead times. Thanks for this question. I think the H-term executive summary will be out within the next week or two, and the course catalog will be revealed, I want to say in September. Katie, is that about right?
The last email I got from the committee that said they were shooting for mid-August, so it may be a little bit before September.
We're on track for mid-August, yep.
Dr. Spencer, in a quick answer before we lose you, can you tell us when is the earliest that we can get a COVID test and still satisfy the requirement? You're muted. Okay, we'll get you that answer. I'm sorry. What are the plans to make sure students are feeling mentally healthy? Is there going to be an intentional difference in campus environment to make sure students are feeling relatively at ease? Thanks for that question. So first of all, we know that many of the restrictions that we're adding will add to that stress and anxiety and tension. At the same time, the decisions we've made about the block schedule and about passing time, we hope will counteract that. But at the same time, Lisa Rothling, our Director of Counseling, and our counseling team are very much committed to supporting the mental health of our students. And they have a lot of proactive programs underway. And obviously students can make appointments with them. They're supporting our students during the quarantine period. There'll be weekend activities and workshops and the like as well. And that's also why we're trying to have really quiet weekends as well, so students can relax and unwind and decompress. I'm in Canada as well. Can my child still do their quarantine at home? We have no cases in our area and are less than 500 miles away. Unfortunately, you must be in the United States under CDC guidelines. So you, even though you're 500 miles away, you are considered international, and by those regulations, you have to quarantine in the United States. I'm sorry about that. Do parents need a special authorization to cross the US border from Canada? We do not know the answer to that, but we will try to get you an answer. Helen will work on that and try to let our Canadian families know. Okay. After all of the students have been on campus for at least 14 days, would Hill ease some of the social distancing restrictions and requirements, since the group will be effectively quarantined together and beyond the incubation period established by the CDC? We will ease some of our restrictions. However, some of those restrictions are imposed by law. So under Pennsylvania law, students must wear masks. They must be physically distant. There are residential requirements as well, dining requirements. So, and let's just remember, we have a number of individuals commuting to and from campus every day, our day students, some of our employees. So we cannot form a perfect fortress or bubble around campus. And so we're going to have to keep taking precautions. But as the campus wellness level de-escalates, some of those restrictions will be relaxed. People in New York can't have a COVID test if they don't exhibit symptoms. What should a New York student do? So I'm not 100% sure that's accurate. It may be, it depends where in New York, but you should consider going to urgent care. And we will also be working with all students, trying to provide an option either before by mail or when you arrive on campus. And you should, and our new test partner may be able to accommodate you by mail or in other ways. So please keep an eye out and contact the Wellness Center with those questions. Can you explain more about early move-in and dorm setup? Basically, you'll get an email next week where you'll be able to schedule an appointment similar to what our students did at the end of last year to move out. I think it's a 2 to 3 hour appointment with no more than 2 parents. You'll come to campus. It'll be sort of 1 student per dorm or per floor at a time. There'll be masks required. You'll have to register and check in. You can help move your child in from your car and basically stay in like the car corridor room footprint and set it up and then leave. And then your student will come back on their pre-assigned day. But that would be part of the quarantine period. So you'd have to follow quarantine restrictions when you're traveling and precautions. Oh, I have an answer from the Canadian consulate. Big thanks to the Singh family. They emailed the US consulate in Canada regarding traveling across the border to bring our child down. Shorter answer is yes, and they will forward us the email. So there you go. The Canadians can come with their children. Are we keeping in mind that students in this age bracket are not getting sick from this virus? Can we stress to our Hill families and students that most likely if we wash our hands and social distance and masks, we will be healthy and safe? Can we focus on the positive stats? Absolutely. We definitely know that our students are in the lowest risk category. And they generally, if they do get ill, their symptoms are mild. However, there are other people on our campus who are more vulnerable, including our employees, some of our employees and some of our students, and some of the families. And we also know that some of our students, like our day students, are traveling home. But we are doing this because of our empathy for our community and for our loved ones and for our classmates and for our teachers. So we absolutely are hoping for the best, but we are also taking serious precautions to keep our entire community and our surrounding area safe. Will the role of the prefect change? If so, how? Mr. Baum.
I think the responsibilities will probably expand, but I don't know that the role will change, meaning we'll still expect and rely on prefects as an important facilitator of school standards. But of course, you're hearing and understanding that a lot of those standards are changing specifically hour by hour. So I think that's the best way I can answer that.
Okay, I did get a text from Dr. Spencer. She's having a mouse malfunction on her computer. The earliest COVID test date that would satisfy the requirement is currently August 10th. This may be redefined depending on our new test partner. So please don't get a test before August 10th, and keep an eye on your email next week about testing. For boarding students, when do they need, oh, that's the same question. With the block scheduling, Katie, at what points during the terms will midterm and final testing for classes be held?
So we're approaching grade reporting in a different way this year because of the dramatic change to our schedule, to both our daily schedule and our yearly schedule. So we will be providing sort of grade to date updates at the end of the rotations, and then a final cumulative grade at the end of the year after sort of an exam period that may or may not result in a traditional exam, which is typical of Hill's final exams. Sometimes they're more project type cumulative or culminating, assessments. So we're not going to be reporting traditional midterms, but sort of end of rotation grade reports and comments.
What will day students be required to do as far as being monitored for the virus when they go home each day and weekends? Will they be required to limit their activities and contact to others to ensure safety on campus? Yes, our day students are taking special precautions. They're signing the Community Health Compact. They too are not allowed to do club sports or outside activities. They're being asked to screen twice a day, once before they leave the home and once when they arrive on campus. They're going to special locations on campus during their free period, so there's some separation of them as well. And we're asking them to take special precautions at home. And if they become ill at home, they're to use their primary care physician, not the Hill Wellness Center. So we are asking a lot of those students, and we're asking the same of our other commuting members of the community. Okay, since the students can't leave on weekends, will there be any on-campus church and worship services available on weekends using the campus clergy? Yes, they will probably not be indoors. The chapel is a really challenging space for us this year for large group gatherings, but I know that Reverend Adams and Reverend Confirmartins have a good plan for this, which will involve outdoor activities as well as virtual and remote as well. Will varsity athletes with intense training schedules be able to work out in the mornings before class as they've done in prior years? We hope so, but probably not right away. We'll be working on that in the coming weeks. We have not been able to get COVID testing for our son since he is under 18. Even when they are available, the results have been taking more than 2 weeks. Are mail-in tests acceptable? Yes, and you will get more information from us in the coming days. Will the students know their roommate before they make their room setup appointment? Ari, will the roommates know their roommates before they make their room setup appointment?
I think so. I think we'll have those out soon, but because there's some, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, admissions is putting the final touches on that in the next few days.
Okay. I'm a prefect, but may not make it back to campus in time. Do I lose my position? Short answer, definitely not. You will maintain your prefect position. For students coming back on August 5th, what's the earliest date for a COVID test? You do not have to have a COVID test if you're quarantining on campus. We will do that COVID test after August 10th for you on campus. What happens if we're adhering to quarantine regulations and our state moves to the restricted list? That is a good question. We will we'll deal with it as it comes. Hopefully it won't happen, but you may have to shift to on campus at that point. But we hope that that will stabilize and we'll work with you. Is it true you can't hang out in your friend's dorm and in a different hall coming from a boarder? Yes, that's true. Dormitories are limited to their specific residents on their specific floors. And depending on what CWL we're in, you're also limited to your interaction without a mask on to either your roommate or to a pre-assigned pair of rooms, so a total of 4 people. You can, in your own dorm and on your own hall, interact in the common room using physical distancing and masking, but you cannot enter other people's dorms, and day students cannot enter any dorms. So that is true. When does our schedule come out, and when are deadlines for course changes? Mrs. Hudak?
I'm sorry, I got distracted. You'll have to repeat the question. I'm very sorry.
When will our schedules come out, and what are the deadlines for course changes?
So course schedules should be out within a couple of weeks. The drastic change to our schedule necessitated quite a different timeline than we're accustomed to enjoying. So know that my office is hard at work getting the senior systems, which is our software, to play nicely with our schedule, unusual as it is. As we said, you know, when students signed up for courses, it's going to be somewhat dicey changing schedules at this point, changing classes. So we're really hopeful that people signed up for the courses for which they were recommended, and will have minimal course changes. There are a lot of reasons for that I won't go into here, but the deadline is quite early in the year, you know, as soon as possible.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, we're approaching 2 hours, and our panelists have been on this since 6 o'clock for over 3 hours. So I am going to, I'm going to ask people to not enter any more questions at this point. I will do rapid fire answers on the remaining questions. If you have other questions, please use the form that was circulated to submit the questions. We'll send you responses, and we'll update the FAQs. And we may direct you to the plan. So just want to clarify the on-campus quarantine. Will students be out in groups or individually during the outside time? And is it too late to sign up? They will be individual. They may be outside, and you may be able to see each other, but you'll be physically distant and wearing masks if you're within 6 feet. and it's not too late to sign up. You can fill out the form and contact Mr. Genikis or Mr. Baum.
As soon as possible, please.
As soon as possible, yes, thank you. Can you clarify where the students are allowed to go at Thanksgiving? Can they go on a trip with their parents on a flight? Is the answer different if they are returning as a winter athlete? So once you're on hibernation, you're sort of on your own. Certainly when you return to campus, you may have to follow certain protocols, and depending on where we are in March, you may have to get retested and staggered arrival and quarantine again. But yes, it will be quite different, I think, if you're returning as a winter athlete, because we will not want you to risk that exposure and be delayed in returning. Just thinking ahead, and based on the movement of rooms for the winter season, is the plan for students to move out of their rooms completely at Thanksgiving, or will students be able to leave their things in their room until March? Will this apply to all students, or will they be notified later? Basically, yep, everyone's going to be packing up and moving. You may get lucky and happen to be in the dorm you're staying in for if you're a winter athlete, or your dorm may not be used. But that's why we're asking people to return with limited furnishings, so that we can pack and move more quickly, and we'll make sure there's time and support for that. While my daughters are in quarantine phase at home before they board at school, as parents, do we also need to quarantine, or can we limit outside activities? We are not asking parents to quarantine. There'll be clear instructions. Obviously, we hope that parents will limit their outside activities during that time, and also physically distance from their children, or the quarantine really has limited effectiveness. So we're sort of asking you to quasi-quarantine as parents, but it depends on how much interaction you're having with your child during that time. I know it's complicated, and we appreciate it. When will prefects have more information about leadership training? That'll come out in the next couple of weeks, and you'll hear from Mr. Genikis on that. Will Catholic students have the shuttle to attend Mass at St. Al's on Sundays? My quick answer is probably not. We're not allowing outside activities, and so we will figure out an alternative to that. Obviously, it depends on the campus wellness level, but I do not expect that during the CWL, during the opening conditions. Okay, I think I've answered just about every question I can. It is 9:23. We're grateful to everyone for being here today. As I've said before, we're doing our best to hold this plan where it is. There are some things outside of our control, and sometimes it feels like the ground is moving underneath our feet as we walk across it. And we just appreciate your flexibility and understanding that things are changing quickly, and we will communicate them with you as quickly as possible. And we hope that you understand that we are doing our best. Really tough situation, and we're committed to bringing our students back to campus and keeping our community safe. We're also really excited about the school year ahead. We've been apart for too long, and we can't wait to see your children and to be with them on campus, and learning and growing and playing and living together. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good week, have a good weekend, and we'll see you in August.